and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the arrogant and supercilious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Lots to do on the show today, but we begin with a little promo for tomorrow's program, an interview that you don't want to miss. Former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox, is going to be with us tomorrow on the program. That interview is going to take place at 9 o'clock, so in the second hour. But you really should listen to the whole thing because we're going to be leading up to the interview, and then we're going to have a great discussion with the Chief Justice. So definitely don't want to miss that. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody you know, but definitely don't miss it. On today's show, we better lead off with all the Russiagate, or as I'm going to refer to it from here on out, Obamagate. Now, we know that Obamagate started really when he got elected, and I'm not referring to all of the stories about his birth certificate or any of that. I am referring to how they didn't necessarily have the crystal clear administration, pristine administration, the one that was devoid of any sort of controversy whatsoever, as they claimed, because they did have Fast and Furious, and I mean, it was amazing at how many different scandals they had. Libya, Benghazi, I mean, I guess it was two of the same things, but I mean, scandal after scandal after scandal. And I guess we all should have known from the very beginning when they said, we're going to have the most transparent and scandal-free administration ever, what was actually going to happen. Whatever they claim, they're doing the opposite of. And whatever they accuse you of, they themselves are doing. But now it seems that I don't want to say that the chickens have come home to roost, because I think that phrase implies that people are being held accountable. But there are a lot of classified documents that are coming out, being released by DNI Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and it's a lot of stuff that I don't think any of these people ever thought that it would see the light of day. I was watching Glenn Beck's program last night, and of course he had a copy of both of the releases, and one of them, he was explaining that Tulsi Gabbard got it out of the most secure vault in the U.S. government, that it was never to see the light of day. And that's the one that says that, look, they really just made this whole thing up, and it was John Brennan and Clapper and Susan Rice and Barack Obama, and mainly Barack Obama, who did all of this. So, I mean, this is a huge story. And, do I think that Barack Obama is going to end up being prosecuted? No, I don't think so. I think he'll probably claim executive privilege, and we'll argue over that for the next couple of years. Do I think that Hillary Clinton is going to be thrown in jail? No, I don't think that's really going to happen. However, I mean, it is possible that people like Clapper and John Brennan and those sorts of folks, Susan Rice, could absolutely be held accountable. And I'm not saying that Barack Obama couldn't be held accountable. I'm saying that my money's on he's not going to be wearing any silver bracelets anytime soon. I hope he does. Absolutely. I think everything that I've seen, and I'm going to show you a little bit later on in the program, I'm going to show you some of the pages out of a couple of those documents. And it absolutely says that they made this whole thing up and that the intelligence assessment was exactly the opposite of what the documents actually say. That they went into a meeting saying, hey, there's no Russia influence here. They couldn't possibly have done it. They don't have the technology. And then when they came out of the meeting, it was a totally different story that they interfered all over the place and helped Donald Trump get elected. So, and that change was made by Barack Obama. And I mean, nobody should be surprised about that. So, but let's begin with the Daily Wire. A piece entitled, John Brennan Responds to Specious Allegations from the Obama-Russia Intel Controversy, or Obamagate. And I quote, former CIA Director John Brennan, who, I mean, he really does resemble Dr. Evil, if you ask me. But anyway, John Brennan rebutted what he said were specious allegations that former President Barack Obama and his team sought to gin up intelligence to create a narrative of Russian interference to assist President Donald Trump in the 2016 election. In an interview this week on PMS NBC, Brennan criticized Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who have accused him and other Obama-era national security leaders of manipulating intelligence. Quote, the specious allegations that both she and Ratcliffe are making based on the things that they're putting out really are quite concerning, and they're quite dangerous, Brennan said. Well, they are concerning for all of us, and they are dangerous to people like you and Clapper and Susan Rice. Fox News reported on Monday that the Department of Justice confirmed receipt of a criminal referral from Gabbard regarding the intelligence assessment released in early 2017 that claimed Russian meddling sought to help defeat Hillary Clinton. Quote, it's worse than even politicization of intelligence, Gabbard told Fox News host Maria Bartiromo. It was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency and subverting the will of the American people. Okay, so a lot of talk of, what these documents say. And let me just, let's see here. Let's go to the first one. I'll go ahead and throw this up, Ken. So this is from the CIA assessment of, this whole Russia conspiracy thing. And this part here, the highlighted part, it says, quote, Brennan sent a note to the CIA workforce stating he had met with the DNI and FBI director and that, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in the recent presidential election. So notice that it doesn't say that it is only the intelligence community. What it says is there is consensus among us. So really what he is referring to is Obama, Brennan, Clapper, and Susan Rice. That is the us he's referring to, and I guess it's over there in that piece. It goes on. Brennan's premature signaling that agency heads had already reached consensus before the ICA was even coordinated risked stifling analytic debate. So, in other words, what that means is they just decided all amongst themselves that Russia interfered in the election and that they didn't allow the CIA to debate this at all, that there was no discussion of whether or not it actually happened. And if you look at the second page, here we go. One, maybe. Anyway, it says the DA review identified multiple specific concerns, including a higher confidence level than was justified, insufficient exploration of alternative scenarios, lack of transparency on source uncertainty, uneven argumentation, and inclusion of the, quote, unsubstantiated Steele dossier material. That pretty much tells you right there that everything that they were saying about the Russia hoax was made up. That there was no transparency, that there was insufficient exploration of alternatives, and they included the Steele dossier. And really, when you look at the whole thing, the genesis of this entire hoax was the Steele dossier. And who commissioned that, might I ask? Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was the beginning of all of this. Now, I'm not saying that she had her fingers in all along the way here, but definitely the Steele dossier was used to start the investigation. It was used to obtain the FISA warrants. It was published by the media, and in the end, and I heard a statistic yesterday that over 60% of Democrats still believe that Donald Trump colluded with Russia. 60%, and all of it was made up. I mean, that my friends is an absolutely shocking number. But it also, the documents that Gabbard released go a little bit farther. In fact, it wasn't that they wanted that the Russians wanted Donald Trump to win. I'm pretty sure Vladimir Putin. I mean, that Donald Trump was the last person that he wanted to win the presidency. It was actually Hillary Clinton, because the Russians had so much dirt on her, and that she was suffering from some pretty serious medical conditions. Here's a video, and it's published by Breitbart. You can see it on my screen. Go ahead and put it up, Ken, and I'll go ahead and play the video.
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had, on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Okay, so...
Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, that's essentially a pretty good explanation, summary of everything that I just told you. But it was very clear that the Russians wanted Hillary Clinton to win. And if you read that report, oh, and by the way, I put a link to the report I showed you excerpts from at cowboystatepolitics.com. Let me just show you where that's at real quick so you can find it. Let's see here. Come on, here we go. Oh, by the way, I don't show the website on the show enough, but here's the Cowboy State Politics website, and then if you go to show content, here's that link right here, and if you click on it, it should go. Where'd it go? Okay, so I've got a broken link. I'm glad we looked at that. I'll fix that, but that's where it's going to be on the website. So anyway, I mean, it's very clear that that a lot of the Russia hoax, the Obamagate, was absolutely made up, and that it wasn't it wasn't Donald Trump that the Russians wanted to win. It was absolutely Hillary Clinton. And the culprits in this thing, John Brennan, James Clapper, Susan Rice, and numero uno on the list is Barack Obama. And there's a piece in the Federalist that, and I mean, you pull up the news, and Obamagate, what I'm calling Obamagate, is everywhere, as it should be. I mean, this is by far the biggest conspiracy inside the American government that I think that I've ever heard of. And it's, Watergate. I mean, historians always refer to that when you're talking about conspiracies inside government. Watergate was small in comparison to this. Essentially, there was a break-in at the DNC building at Watergate, and then Richard Nixon tried to cover it up. That's the extent of it. This one is trying to mess around with the 2016 election, and then after Donald Trump was elected, to delegitimize his entire administration, which ended up being, him being impeached twice. And the reasons that they used for the impeachment were a little bit different. I mean, they didn't exactly say it's Russia. But all of those people, Clapper, Brennan, Susan Rice, Barack Obama, all of them were right. I mean, they were right in the middle of all of the Ukraine stuff. So all of this started with Hillary Clinton, the Steele dossier. It continued all the way through the 2016 election through Trump's first term as president, and then it culminated in a couple of impeachments. And if you look at the water that the mainstream media was carrying for this, it is absolutely incredible. And by the way, I highly suggest that you go watch Glenn Beck's episode from last night. He lays out the entire timeline through this. He's got documents showing you, excerpts from the documents I showed you, which I will fix the link to those directly after today's program so that you can read that document for yourself. But from the Federalist, top intelligence officials contradicted Brennan. No intelligence to support the key Russia hoax claim, or Obamagate. Quote, top officials working on an intelligence community analysis about Russia's interference in the 2016 election were overruled by CIA Director John Brennan, according to records exclusively reviewed by the Federalist. The records are related to ongoing criminal investigations into Brennan and other top intelligence officials for their roles in launching the Russia collusion hoax. The dispute over the, quote, key judgment in the January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, that's the document that I showed you a little bit earlier, that Russia had interfered in the election specifically because Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances. Senior intelligence officials pointed out the lack of evidence to substantiate the claim. Quote, we have no intelligence to directly support this aspiration point, said one member of a small group of individuals working with Brennan, James Comey, Director James Clapper, on the assessment of Russian activity in the lead up to the 2016 election. So in other words, they go into this meeting at the White House, and there is absolutely no evidence that this is happening. And there are people inside the CIA that are telling John Brennan, look, there's nothing here. There's the Steele dossier, but that's not true at all. So they went into the meeting with Brennan's own people telling him, look, there's nothing here. And they came out of the meeting with Obama saying, well, the Russians are trying to steal the election. The official worried that the inclusion of the claim would, quote, open the IC to a line of very politicized inquiry that is sure to come up when this paper is shared on the Hill. A recent CIA analysis of the inclusion of this disputed key judgment noted the risks, including poorly supported judgments, since skeptical readers are inclined to, quote, reject an entire analysis if a single judgment appears exaggerated, biased, or unsupported. The experts did not disagree that Russia had continued its practice of attempting to sow chaos in presidential elections. They do that all the time. They believed the intelligence indicated Russia sought to weaken presumptive winner Hillary Clinton. I just showed you the video of DNI Tulsi Gabbard saying that wasn't true. In fact, the truth was exactly the opposite. But they were concerned about the lack of evidence for the claim that became the cornerstone of the Russia collusion narrative, in which Trump was accused of conspiring with Russia to steal the 2016 election. Quote, can you really prove Moscow was trying to get Trump elected? The official asked in late December 2016. Brennan called the dissenting individuals into his office on December 30th of 2016 and had a lengthy meeting in which they articulated their serious concerns. Quote, the assessment will stay the same, Brennan reported at the end of the meeting. So, in other words, it didn't matter what Brennan's staff was telling him. It didn't matter what the CIA was telling him. It didn't matter what everybody else that is under John Brennan said. They had already made up their mind that Russia was interfering in the election, and it was entirely made up from the very beginning. My friends, this is a conspiracy. This is a controversy. This is a criminal act of gigantic proportions. I mean, this is, and I think the AutoPen scandal is pretty big. That, there were a group of now unknown people in charge of the president's signature. That's a pretty big scandal, right? I mean, that is the classic oligarchy that we don't know who's running the government because we know that it clearly wasn't Joe Biden. There's no way that Joe Biden even knew what was happening. And I mean, you only need one example. Look at all the pardons he issued, right? 2,000 pardons. There's no way that old coot knew each and every one of those documents that he was signing. I mean, it's just, there's no way, Ken.
He wouldn't even know which of them are still alive.
No, I don't. He didn't.
Yeah.
And they admitted as such, Ken. They said that he signed off on categories of people they were going to pardon. And so he didn't even sign any of those. And in fact, and I can't remember who it was, but there was a study done of all of the pardons, including Anthony Fauci and Hunter Biden and all of those people, that the only one that he really did sign was Hunter Biden's. And the rest of them, they used the auto pen. And as I told you, I think it was last week, that 5 days into the Biden presidency, they started using the auto pen. 5 days. They didn't even, the presidency wasn't even cold yet. And they started using the auto pen. So I think that that's a huge scandal. This one, a sitting president trying to first flip a presidential election in favor of his preferred candidate, but second, to completely overturn a sitting president. This is I don't know that we've ever come as close to a coup as we have in this. This is third world, banana republic type activity, and it happened in America. And so don't tell me that this sort of thing doesn't happen here, because obviously it did. And this is one that we've absolutely got to get to the bottom of. Ken, what's your assessment of all this? You're an elected official, so I think that you probably have a different perspective. What do you make of all this?
Oh, I don't think I have a different perspective at all. I was around during Watergate.
Yeah.
I watched the proceedings, paid attention to that, even though I was fairly young. That at the time, it's a good thing they didn't have 24-hour news back then. But at the time, you thought, man, this is really something. And my dad said, you know what? He says, really isn't that big a deal. He says, this is probably the sort of thing that goes on all the time. They just decided to use it this time. But the types of things that we're talking about that went on during the Obama, during the Biden presidencies, which are really one and the same.
Absolutely.
They're pretty much unprecedented.
Well, and one of the comments that Beck made last night is that it was really Obama that's been running things, since 2016, since before. Well, he was president, before then, but from the election of 2016 all the way through Biden's presidency, Obama's fingerprints are all over this. There is no getting around it. And it's this is a big one, my friends. And yeah.
You mentioned it's kind of like Banana Republic, third world stuff, and it just made me think about Kenya.
I saw a meme, a cartoon, and Joe Biden and Barack Obama are sitting together, and Obama's got his head in his hands, and Joe says, maybe we could run away to Kenya. I hear you have relatives there. And Obama says, shut up, Joe. But I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch where this thing goes. But my friends, we have got to get to the bottom of this. And whatever happens prosecution wise, everybody involved needs to be held accountable. But like I said at the beginning of this segment, I doubt very seriously that Barack Obama is going to be put in handcuffs. Though this sure as heck smacks of treason to me.
Every time they get away with something, and they get away with something greater and greater each time. Look at the string of allegations against Bill and Hillary over the years.
Oh yeah.
Nothing has ever been investigated with 1/100th of the fervor that they investigated Donald Trump. Donald Trump's still free. If they continue to get away with this stuff, we're done.
Yeah. And it really is, what Ronald Reagan said, that we're only one generation away from extinction. And I think that, I think another thing, and if we want to take a more philosophic approach to this, I think this shows you how fragile a republic actually is. Benjamin Franklin famously said that, it's a republic if you can keep it. And it's I think that we were very, very close to losing our republic, and I think if we don't hold these people accountable, we probably will. So let's go ahead and take a break. When I come back, we're going to go to a doctor from CNN and what the mainstream media is up to. This is fun. You're going to love it. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Now, you can pretty much find the show anywhere you want, or you can always go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, which I promise I will get it updated right after we're done today. Before the break, we were talking about Obamagate, and I don't, honestly, anywhere you look in the media, you'll find this. But Donald Trump did talk about this in the Oval Office, and I forgot to play these videos during the last segment, so we'll go ahead and play them. Play the first one, Ken, and then we'll talk about it.
Continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold. Tulsi Gabbard, what they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. When we caught Hillary Clinton, I said, you know what? Let's not go too far here. It's the ex-wife of a president, and I thought it was sort of terrible.
Ex-wife.
And I
Did you notice he said
let her
that?
off the hook, and I'm very happy I did. But it's time to start after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, a group. It's not a group.
Okay, that's good enough.
It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are...
So I think he makes a good point. And while he didn't say it in this way, this is the way I'm going to characterize it, that if they can do this to Donald Trump, what can they do to you? Now, in theory, that everybody in America is held to the same standard. And we know that that's not true, but that's the theory. And if you can do this to a former president or a current president, then prosecute a former president, what could they possibly do to you? And the answer to that is anything that they want. And now I don't know. I mean, Ken, maybe you can weigh in on this too, but I was not one of the people that thought we should lock up Hillary Clinton. Now, I know during the 2016 election, every rally that he held, there were chants of lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. But I actually think that it was, at the time, I think that it was a good decision to say, you know what, we're done, we're past this, she lost, let's just move on. Now, in retrospect, and again, hindsight is 2020, but at the time, I thought it was the right decision not to go after Hillary Clinton.
I'd have to say that I think they should have locked her up.
Okay.
Yeah, they need to. We need to be decisive about things like this.
Well, and it's a different thing when you're talking about politics and the criminal law. Because in the criminal law, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And I don't think at the time there was certainly a lot of stuff there. The Steele dossier, they couldn't legitimate any of that. So it was definitely contrived. Hillary Clinton definitely paid for it. There was the email scandal, which we know more about that too, though I didn't prep that for today's show. But there was lots of things that she did. And, I mean, and like I say, at the time I thought, all right, well, we got Trump. All right, fine. What else can Hillary Clinton do? And, well, we found out.
Yeah, well, the danger, of course, is if we get into a situation where when the pendulum swings one way and the Democrats are in charge, all the Republicans that were in charge go to jail, and then the other way around. Now we're starting to look like medieval England.
Yeah, kind of is.
When a new king comes in, he has to kill all of the other people that might have some sort of a claim to the throne. And we don't want to go there. But I think we have to prove these cases publicly, and that's what Tulsi's doing.
Yeah.
And then when it's out there and everybody knows and understands what happened, there needs to be an appropriate response.
Well, and then, Ken, there's also the broken windows theory. Rudy Giuliani, used that in New York, and the idea is that you always fix the broken windows. Because if you have a broken window, anybody that passes by says, oh, look, somebody threw a rock through that window. Let's smash all the other ones. And so the point is that you handle all of the crimes, even the small ones, and in turn, that will deter future criminals. So the next video I've got for you, Trump's talking about who he should go after. Now, in the last one, he says, we got to go after these people. It's time. But in this video, he's going to tell you who we should go after. Maybe.
The Department of Justice. From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper. The whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room. This is much more beautiful than it was then, but that's okay. I have nice pictures up. They came out of the vaults.
He can't help
They
himself.
were in there for 100 years. This is much more beautiful. We have the Declaration of Independence now in the room, which wasn't here. I guess people didn't feel too good about putting it here, but I do. But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of.
Stop right there, Ken. So treason is a very important word because it is the only other crime other than first-degree murder that carries the death penalty with it. For an American president to use the word treason, I mean, we're not I want to say that it is serious. I think that he means it. No, I don't think that he thinks, we should, use the death penalty, but he does. He is saying that, look, they tried to topple an American president. That is treason. I mean, there is no two ways about it. And if it is to be proven, and I think it's pretty conclusive now when you look at all the documents that have come out, yeah, that's absolutely treason. Now, I've got one more little video, and this one's important because Trump says that what they did was a coup. And again, words mean things, and word choice is very important. And so go ahead and play number 3.
But what we found is even more so. Now, we found this isn't like evidence, this is like proof, irrefutable proof that Obama was seditious, that Obama
What do you mean?
was trying to lead a coup. And it was with Hillary Clinton, with all these other people, but Obama headed it up. And, I get a kick when I hear everyone talks about people I never even heard of. It was this one. No. It was Obama. He headed it up. And it says so right in the papers. Got everything. This is the biggest scandal in the history of our country. And it really goes on to even the auto pen, because it all relates to the same thing. It all started the same sick minds. You have an auto pen, which is a tremendous, well, we don't have a president. We have an auto pen that signs everything. I'll bet you sign everything. You don't have auto pens. Everybody, who doesn't sign? You're the president of a country. But it's all that whole thing leading right up to the end of it is the auto pen. And the auto pen was used by people, and Biden knew nothing about it. Biden knew nothing about it. They were signing documents that he knew nothing about. As an example.
Okay, so he's actually talking about two different coups. So with the Biden administration, you had people that were, manning the auto pen, and they were signing a whole bunch of stuff that Biden had no idea about. That he did not know what planet he was on. So, I mean, that fits the definition of a coup also. But what Obama, Clapper, Brennan, Susan Rice, Joe Biden, Mark Elias, he was in there too. What all of those people, Ben Rhodes, what all of those people did is an attempted coup. They tried to take over the U.S. presidency. And, they impeached him twice. And, I mean, we could debate whether or not they were able to take it over, but I mean, it was a coup.
Don't leave out Liz Cheney.
Oh yeah, don't leave out Liz Cheney. And if you watch that whole video, he talks about Cricket's Cheney too, with her unselect committee and burning all the documents, and so big thing. Now, the question is, what is the media doing? The media was essential in this whole conspiracy, and if you look at the timeline, leaks were. Strategic leaks to the media were used to perpetuate this thing so that in the end, 60% of Democrats believe that he actually colluded. But now the mainstream media is doing something entirely differently. From the Blaze, and I quote, "The first 6 months into President Donald Trump's second term have been strong with early victories, including the southern border being secured and the one big beautiful bill becoming law. But there's zero self-reflection in the media. You have people like Jake Tapper writing books about things that we already knew. And, it's the common thing, who covered up. Jake Tapper writes a book about who covered up Biden's mental decline. And he finds out that it was Jake Tapper who covered up Biden's mental decline. But here's what the media is focusing on now. Instead of going after John Brennan and Barack Obama and being a principled journalist, here's a couple of the headlines. From ABC News, critics say Trump is trying to distract from Epstein by talking about everything but that. So before, the media didn't want to talk about Epstein. Now they do because it's a useful distraction from what's actually going on. Here's one from the Washington Post. As MAGA world focuses on Epstein, Trump seeks focus on anything else. From The Independent, Trump administration delves into MAGA distractions in deviation from the so-called Epstein files. From Rolling Stone, Trump's wildly fantastic posting spree isn't just a distraction from Epstein. And then from the Huffington Post, CNN's Eric Burnett nails the playbook behind Donald Trump's Epstein distraction blitz. So instead of focusing on the biggest controversy, the biggest conspiracy in American history, it's, pay attention to what's happening over here. It's Epstein over here. Look over here. It's classic misdirection. And the media, I mean, we all know that they've always been in the tank for the leftists, but I mean, this is the most blatant example of that. And the Blaze goes on. While the controversy over the Epstein files has caused great debate with Trump's base, other pressing issues have sprung up in recent weeks since the leaked Epstein memo from the Department of Justice. It wasn't leaked. They let it out. The mainstream media might call Trump's actions distractions, but others note they are par for the course for Trump's leadership style. Curtis Hawk, managing director of the Media Research Center's Newsbusters, said this lock-in-step approach from major news media organizations is nothing new. Quote, "There's zero self-reflection or chance to cry uncle. Incredibly, doing so might help them regain a modicum of credibility. Instead, these partisan tools go deeper into character." And don't expect that the mainstream media is going to cover any of this stuff with Obama or Clapper or Brennan. They're just not going to do it because it doesn't fit their agenda, and their agenda is to delegitimize anything that Donald Trump does. And again, if they were to just admit, okay, look, and even if they lied, oops, we got it wrong. Okay, here's where we're at now. They would actually gain a little bit of credibility back. One of the reasons on Cowboy State Politics that I lead with my mistakes is it helps with my credibility, right? That if you never admit you're wrong, there's no reason for anybody to assume that you're actually right. And if you do it right up front and say, "Whoops, I missed this one, got it wrong. I'll do better in the future," it actually helps build your credibility, and that's why Cowboy State Politics has the record that it does. That we actually admit our mistakes, but don't expect to see that from the mainstream media. Don't expect it to see that from the Wyoming media. I've got a story that we're going to hit after the top of the hour. It's a perfect example of what the mainstream Wyoming press does. But here's one from the Washington Free Beacon. And in my experience, the Free Beacon they're quite a bit better than the rest of the media. In fact, I might even say that they lean a little bit to the right. But there was CNN, the Communist News Network, had a doctor on who raised alarms about Trump's diagnosis. She's actually an NAACP health equity director and not a practicing physician. Let me just read a little bit, and then I'll play for you the audio from it. It's absolutely hilarious. Quote, a CNN doctor who painted a dark picture of President Donald Trump's health appears not to have practiced medicine since her residency, instead spending her career as a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. She's also an apostle of a church whose leader describes Trump as the Antichrist. Chris Purnell, a frequent television doctor for the Communist News Network and other news stations, warned last week that President Trump's broadly unremarkable diagnosis of chronic venous insufficiency could be more than it seems. Quote, it's a disease that is progressive, Purnell said. And what that means is if there aren't conservative treatments, elevation, compression, medication, if needed, to treat accompanying ulcers or skin changes, it can worsen and actually put a person at risk for deep venous thrombosis. So a heart condition or a blood clot is what she's talking about. So go ahead and play. Hold on just a second. Before you play cut number 3, you'll notice if you listen close, that her diagnosis gets worse and worse the more she keeps talking. And this is just another example of CNN's misdirection of what's going on. And their point in doing this is to say, oh, look at Trump. He's probably going to have a heart attack. But go ahead and play cut number 3. This is Communist News Network's doctor.
All right, so we'll keep an eye out for that. For now, Kristen, thank you for bringing us those details. Let's bring in Dr. Chris Purnell, who joins us now. She's a preventive medicine physician and fellow at the American College of Preventive Medicine. So, doctor, how serious is the president's condition from what you're learning?
So it is common in those above the age of 50 and 70, and especially if you have overweight or obesity, you've had a history of blood clots in the veins in your lower extremities, or you're a smoker. So while it is not life-threatening, it is a disease that is progressive. And what that means that if there aren't conservative treatments, elevation, compression, medication, if needed to treat accompanying ulcers or skin changes, it can worsen and actually put a person at risk for deep venous thrombosis.
Help us understand, Dr. Purnell, how we should be thinking about this. Is it, as we spoke to another cardiologist, it sounds like it might be helpful to think of it as a bit of a symptom. And so then you really want to know what the underlying cause is. They stressed here at the briefing that it wasn't from a deep vein thrombosis. But there.
So what Trump has is swollen ankles. Now, how many older people do you know that have the same, the same symptoms? Swollen ankles. Trump is over 70 years old. It's pretty normal for him to have that sort of thing. It's not a serious condition. It's not going to lead to a heart attack. At the end of that, I should have let it play, but at the end of that, this Purnell fake doctor says, it could lead to kidney failure.
It's not threatening, though. I did see a picture of Trump's hand, and looks bruised.
Yeah.
And it mentioned all of the handshaking that he does. Well, the only thing I would have that's close to that is every morning on the House floor, we all spend a few minutes going around and shaking hands. And I can tell you that I've experienced some of that. And I'm not old.
Well, I mean, define old. You know, I give my producer a lot of crap for being older than me, but he's definitely not that old. But anyway, my friends, you know, it is classic misdirection from the media, and you know they are masters at doing this, masters of manipulating the truth and you know misdirection. And the only question is it going to work this time? And I think that the revelations behind what Obama, Clapper, Brennan did, I have to think that it's going to eclipse what the media's misdirection. That at some point they're going to have to say, yeah, okay, you got us. But the question is, how long is it going to take? Will it be after Trump finishes his second term before they admit, okay, yeah, it was Obama? I don't know. That remains to be seen, my friends. Well, the Democrats have also been working on something else, and they lost the House, they lost the Senate, and obviously they lost the presidency. And so they created a system, and I think this is one they've been working on for a long time, certainly with Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer confirming as many judges as possible. They created a system where they could fight back through the courts. And thankfully, the Supreme Court now has ruled that all of these nationwide injunctions are unconstitutional. Absolutely a good thing, and they were right to do that. But the Democrats, they kind of created this whole court monster. But there's a piece, again, and this is kind of a blaze heavy news day. You'll find that when you have a job like mine that you'll have one day where there's nothing from a news outlet, and then the next, every good piece of news comes from one place. But anyway, this one's from the Blaze, and it's entitled "Democrats Creating This Court Monster, and Now It's Eating Them." And I quote, "Liberals used the courts to bypass democracy for decades. Now Trump is flipping that script and reshaping the judiciary in the process. The Supreme Court's recent ruling greenlighting mass layoffs at the Department of Education sends a clear message. The courts no longer belong to the Democrats." Now, I don't know if I would go that far. There are a lot of leftist judges, some of whom are in Wyoming, that the Democrats were able to push through. And, while we have President Trump, and he is able to make a whole bunch of judicial appointments, we still have a lot of leftist judges like that Boasberg guy. That we have to contend with, and even though the Supreme Court, in my opinion, has done an okay job fighting back against a lot of these unconstitutional leftist mandates, I mean, we still have some problems at the court. John Roberts, but for decades, the Democrats relied on judges to impose policies that they couldn't pass through. But that strategy has collapsed. With the conservative majority now on the bench, the judicial workaround has given way to constitutional limits, and the left is losing. Now, remember, keep in mind as I go through this, that we've still got to deal with John Roberts. A lot of the time, he sides with the left. You can thank John Roberts for Obamacare. He's the one that changed his decision, at the very last minute, and you can read his opinion and tell that that's exactly what happened. Every time the Democrats sue to block Trump's orders, they hand him another opportunity. And this court is more than ready to lock in conservative victories for a generation. In the final week of the 2024-2025 term, here's what the court did. Curbed the federal court's ability to issue nationwide injunctions. In my opinion, that's one of the bigger ones. Affirmed the right of parents to opt their children out of school lessons that violate their religious beliefs. Allows South Carolina to deny Planned Parenthood Medicaid funding for non-abortion services, and approve mass layoffs across the government, at least temporarily. In high-stakes emergency cases, Trump keeps winning, notching victories in nearly all 18 Supreme Court petitions. That includes green lights to deport migrants to third countries and enforce the transgender military ban. Democrats thought they could run out the clock with courtroom delay tactics. Instead, they handed Trump a fast pass to one branch that he dominates. Now, again, I don't really think that he's necessarily dominating the judicial branch. In fact, I would have some pretty grave concerns if he actually was, dominating the judicial branch. But I think that there have been a lot of rulings that have ended up in Trump's favor, and certainly, and again. The biggest one in my mind is the nationwide injunction thing, the ban on that. But secondly, reaffirming that it is the president who is in charge of the executive branch and that if he wants to lay off a bunch of workers, he can absolutely do that. But again, as a historian, I'll have to caution you again that I don't think that you can judge a presidency while it's happening, because there are a lot of decisions that presidents make that have results way after they're president. And we're going to, after the top of the hour break, we're going to talk about one of those that President Reagan did that really wasn't that great. But when you look at, when you're trying to determine the effectiveness of a presidency, to take a historical perspective on it, it takes a couple of years. And I think that this Department of Education one is going to be one of the ones that has the greater impact on our society than a lot of the other decisions that Trump has made, simply because it is I think it's the goal of the Trump administration to return education of your children back to you. That it is not your children are not little minions of the state anymore, that the school can't do whatever they want to your kids. But certainly, this is going to take some time to filter down. I don't even think that most of those Department of Education people have been laid off yet. But when that happens, the influence of the federal Department of Education is going to lessen, and then states will have to pick up the slack, where before they were just taking federal funding and doing whatever the federal Department of Education said. And as we discussed yesterday on the show, the amount of money that Wyoming gets from the federal Department of Education is only about 11% of the entire budget. I think that's right. But we got so much cash in the bank that we could cover that 11% and we wouldn't even feel it.
There's another aspect to that too, in that a large portion of taking that money is spent on administering those regulations, and that takes another, I think it's close to 5% out of it. So we actually only netting about 6%.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Wow. How much, do you have an idea of how much what the dollar number is on that?
I don't, but it's pretty insignificant. Nothing's insignificant right now while they're suing us, trying to say that we don't spend enough and we need to buy every student out there a laptop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and that ruling is fascinating. And I have to think that that one will get overturned. And it's unfortunate that, and maybe here's a good time to talk about what we can discuss with Justice Fox and what we can't. While she agreed to come on the program, she was very clear, saying that she couldn't talk about any pending cases and that she wouldn't. And that just makes sense. I mean, there's still some cases that she's involved in. And, I would love to get her take on that ruling about education funding, because, I mean, the Wyoming Supreme Court, man, they're the ones that created the Campbell decision. And I don't know if Justice Fox was on the court when they handed that one down. That was quite a while ago. But I mean, I got to think that the judge saying you got to buy everybody a laptop and have more school resource officers and feed them better lunch is contributing to their education. I mean, and that's essentially what that judge said.
Better lunch. I suppose we got to go to Michelle and ask for advice on how to feed the kids.
Wow. You remember that? During the break, I'll try to find a picture of the pink slime that Michelle Obama was trying to feed to your kids. Let's see here. We got about 6 minutes left before the top of the break. You know what? Let's go ahead and take our break now, because this next segment's going to take a while. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about amnesty and how the Republicans again are the ones that are trying it. Back in a bit.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics. I'm David Iverson, having more fun than anybody should be allowed to have, doing what I do. And, you know, it's an amazing thing to be able to do what you love. And if you love what you do, you're never working a day in your life. Though sometimes Agent 29 thinks I work him too hard.
Yeah, if I have to get up in the morning, that's a problem. I did want to just chime in on that. To do something that you love, to be able to do something that you're interested in, that captivates the mind, those are all good things. But to be able to do something like we do is only possible by the grace of God.
Absolutely.
And I have to turn to that. I think it's probably about 5 years ago when we were both getting started doing this sort of thing. And we found ourselves in a room with a number of electeds, and we kind of looked at each other like, what are we doing here?
I know.
I firmly believe God put us here.
Absolutely.
And
I agree.
He's the one that's responsible for it, so I praise him for that.
All right, well, let's go. Before we hit this next segment, let's go ahead and take a call. Former Representative Mark Baker. Mark, how's it going, man? Long time no talk to.
Hey, yeah, good. How you guys doing this morning?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Just enjoying the summer and caught a little bit of the show and just wanted to talk to you just for a second about Justice Fox and see if you could maybe get her perspective. She may not be interested in sharing it, but I know that I'd called in previously and just mentioned my disappointment in the process with Governor Meade and his appointment of his chief of staff. And to me, that really illustrates the brokenness of the process. And she may not comment directly on that, but I know, as I discussed before, that when I was in the legislature at the time, there was a lot of disappointment, even among the redcoats and leadership, about that process and that choice. So I think
Well,
if she would comment, that'd be great. But she may not be willing to because it's a former colleague of hers.
now I don't know if she'll comment on a former colleague, but the main topic we're going to discuss is how judicial appointments are made and that process. And she absolutely agreed that that's what we're going to talk about. So I don't know about if she'll get into specifics, but we're definitely going to talk about that.
Yeah, when I made the arrangements, excuse me, Mark, I'm sorry, but when I made the arrangements, we were feeling pretty fortunate to get her to come on. There was some trepidation, as you might imagine. And so I think at least for the first time or two, we're going to try to keep it pretty narrow on what we've agreed on talking about. But we were talking last night, David and I, among ourselves, that a year or two down the road, she might be should be a lot more able to comment on things, and just to be able to give another perspective on the legal side. And I'll just mention very quickly, we're also in negotiations with Representative Lawley, who is an attorney as well. And I think it's good to have lots of different input. So back to you, Mark.
No, I appreciate you guys bringing the different perspectives, and it shows that you guys are doing a really great job, and the fact that they're willing to come on and they're not intimidated by the platform. So, but the other thing I was just wanted to talk about too, just real quick, is the amnesty that you guys are going to get into.
Yeah.
Historically, it's really been something to watch as a Republican because you guys are aware they've always stood on that talking point of let's secure the borders first, and then we'll talk about amnesty. And the neat thing is that they've finally done that. They've secured the borders. I mean, I don't know where the conversation is going to land, but at least we've reached that goal in securing the borders. And Republicans in the past have always failed at that. They've always just thrown that out and used that as a deflection of really having the discussion. So whether we agree with amnesty or not, at least we have secure borders.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a win. And I don't know how far this whole amnesty thing is going to go. I don't know how amenable Donald Trump is to it, but certainly, during the 1986 amnesty bill, which is what we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, they did the amnesty, but they didn't really secure the border, and it ended up being kind of a big bait and switch, and that's the trap that Republicans fall into all the time, and it's the redcoats that end up pushing this.
The Republicans fall into the same trap when we talk about a tax break. Okay, we're gonna cut taxes, which means you're also supposed to cut spending. Well, they cut the taxes, but they never cut the spending. So it's kind of like dividing an amendment. We got caught on that a few times as well.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, since I got you on the phone, I got one more question for you. What's your feeling on the big crypto bill that Cynthia Lummis just got passed?
I personally think it's inevitable. I think that as we move down that road of technology, people that I think that are really apprehensive about the whole technology, either one of two things: either they're not using credit cards now, they're not using the system that's in place now, or maybe they're just opposed to the technology advancement at all. I mean, I kind of look at it as when we started with cash and then moving on to checks, the ability to track checks and see where your money's moved, and then moving to credit cards and those sort of things. Crypto, and I'm a Christian too. I understand the mark of the beast. I understand all those things, but to me, it's just another building block that's being put in place to make the rails of moving money easier. I do think that it gets the federal government and it gets a lot of the government control out of the movement of money. I know that countries like China and even like Russia, the move to de-dollarize and move towards trading in the yen or the ruble, I think that it only hurts America and it hurts the dollar. So I think stable coins, U.S.-backed stable coins like Wyoming's trying to do, I think could really have an impact on not only our budget, but the way that we move. Now, keeping all that in mind, going back to the Christianity and the rails and the mark of the beast, not being able to buy and sell. I talk to people about this all the time. I think that there is no doubt that crypto is probably establishing a rail, but it just moves us further along, like I said, with checks and credit cards and things like that. The ability that you think that you can spend money now and not be tracked, to me, is kind of a farce outside of, maybe a little bit of bartering that might happen, because you go and you make your car payment, you do all these things. You do it basically electronically now. So I don't know. I understand the trepidation. I understand the worry. I understand concern, but I do think that it's the next. And for me, the idea of the mark of the beast gets us closer to the Lord's return. So it's kind of exciting.
All in favor of that. It's one, and
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
Admittedly, I don't know near enough about cryptocurrency, and it's one of those things that I guess I've been kind of negligent on learning about. But I think a good example is, a lot of people worry about, government surveillance, the government knowing what they're doing, but yet they still carry around, one of these, cell phones all the time.
Absolutely.
And that's the most sophisticated intelligence gathering device ever invented. So, you might be right that, hey, this is just another step in the evolution of money. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to find out where it's going to go.
I do think that, though, Wyoming has really capitalized and does have a chance to capitalize on the fact that a government-backed U.S. dollar stablecoin could really be something that is appealing to the market and really could generate revenue for our state. And I know that that right now the projections are really, they're not very accurate, but the possibility of this really generating money for our state is real. And so, that kind of excites me. The technology leading the charge, those things kind of excite me. It is a little bit scary, but as I said, if it comes down to it and they say, hey, you want to trade in a stable coin, you need to put this in your forehead or your hand. I mean, yeah, that's going overboard. But, I don't know. It goes into theological, discussions and things like that too. But, I'm a pre-rapture type person. I don't think that I'm going to have to worry about the mark of the beast, but that's me personally.
Okay, Mark. I have a couple of questions for you regarding what you just said. One of those is, how much money does the state need? And what does the state do with that money? I keep hearing this idea about, look at the revenue the state could generate off of this. Kurt Meyer wants to do a generational fund to generate much more money. And I'm resistant to that, in that the state has a lot of money right now, so we don't even feel the effects of a lot of things that we're doing with it. And two, what are they doing with that money, and is it worth doing?
I tend to agree with you, Ken. As an appropriator, you have an eye on the budget and you understand the expenses that are going out from the state. Is there fat in there? I think so. I think the Freedom Caucus is doing a good job, trying to identify some of that in the state. My hope is that, hey, if the Freedom Caucus is able to reduce property taxes and, shift that burden to say, a sovereign wealth fund that's created or anything like that, shifting that revenue source from the stable token and using it for things that we already utilize in government, whether it's education, whether it's, Department of Corrections, whatever it is, those big things that we've already identified, Department of Health, that are services that we've already bought into as a state. I think what it's going to do is allow us to maybe even reduce those property taxes more. I mean, because the governor of Florida is saying, hey, let's eliminate property taxes nationwide. If that catches on and Trump gets behind that, then the discussion is going to get real, and then we're going to have to find a way to replace those revenues. And I think this could do it. So I agree with you, Ken. Do we want to increase the size of government's, pocketbook just for the sake of doing it? No, I think that what we do is we find those sources of revenue that we may not need, that are really putting the burden on our local taxpayers, and start to reduce those.
Yeah, my fear is that with more money available, they're not going to be able to resist coming up with, look at all the wonderful things we could do. We could have a $3 million flower pot in every town.
I agree, and that's the problem, and I think that in the legislature when I was in, we saw those times. We saw those times of feast, and we saw those times of famine, where it went up and down in 06 and 09, and it's been that process. And I think putting some of the money away is a wise move, but I also think that you got to have people like you, and the Freedom Caucus has got to stay strong in ensuring that, new expenses aren't generated just because there's new revenue.
All right. Well, Mark, I appreciate you calling in. We're going to run and let's talk about some amnesty. Make sure, give me a call anytime you like, my friend.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on.
All right. Thank you to Representative Mark Baker. And a lot of people don't know that even if you're not in the legislature, your title is still representative. So, thank you, Representative Mark Baker. So let's talk about some. Go ahead, Ken. What do you got?
I was just going to say, unless, of course, you were a senator.
Yeah.
They don't particularly like to be called representative because it happens now and then.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of senators I wish that didn't have a title at all, but more than a couple. All right, so amnesty. Every time we end up talking about the border, there is a group, and it's almost always Republicans. They end up talking about amnesty. And the idea that, well, hey, there's been these people in our country for a really long time, and they've put down roots, and we just should grant them amnesty. They've been here long enough, and really they're just citizens. Now, personally, I find that argument to be absolutely preposterous. That if you've been in this country for a really long time, you've had multiple opportunities to become a U.S. citizen. And the only reason that you're not is that you are benefiting off of it, that you're not paying taxes, that you're not, having to contribute to our country. And I find the whole idea to be kind of offensive. But it seems to happen every time we talk about securing the border, we have to talk about amnesty. And again, it is always redcoats that start that discussion. Now, the truth is that Ronald Reagan campaigned on amnesty. And we hear a lot of these pro-amnesty folks say, well, Ronald Reagan was in favor of it, so we should just go ahead and do it. Anything that Ronald Reagan did is great. Now, I've got a soundbite from Reagan and it was during a debate he was having with Walter Mondale. And so here's what he said. Go ahead and play cut number 1, Ken. It's kind of long.
But it is true our borders are out of control. It is also true that this has been a situation on our borders back through a number of administrations. And I supported this bill. I believe in the idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though some time back they may have entered illegally. With regard to the employer sanctions, we must have that, not only to ensure that we can identify the illegal aliens, but also, while some keep protesting about what it would do to employers, there is another employer that we shouldn't be so concerned about. And these are employers down through the years who have encouraged the illegal entry into this country because they then hire these individuals and hire them at starvation wages and with none of the benefits that we think are normal and natural for workers in our country, and the individuals can't complain because of their illegal status. We don't think that those people should be allowed to continue operating free. And this was why the provisions that we had in with regard to sanctions and so forth. And I'm going to do everything I can, and all of us in the administration are, to join in again, when Congress is back at it, to get an immigration bill that will give us once again control of our borders.
Okay, so this is just like Representative Baker was saying, that we always enter this discussion in securing our border and getting control of employers that are hiring illegal aliens, and there are a lot of them. Let's just be honest about it. And it's always secure the border, then we'll talk amnesty. But in the 1986 immigration bill, they didn't get any of the enforcement. We sure as heck got the amnesty, but we didn't necessarily get any of the enforcement. We didn't get the border secured. We didn't get any of that. So it's yay for amnesty, and we'll not do the rest of it. Now, the difference in today is that we do have a secure border, both the southern border and the northern border. And, so that part is generally taken care of. But I question, how entrenched that is in statute or in law. Is it possible? Could it be possible for, the next Democrat that gets in office to completely do away with all of the border security and open things up like Joe Biden did? I argue that, yeah, it is, because Joe Biden ignored a lot of the immigration laws, pretty much all of them, and just threw the doors wide open. They didn't even vet most of the people that were coming through. So historically, and that Reagan soundbite was from 1984 during his second campaign for president. So you could clearly hear him saying, "Look, we got to secure the border. We got to clamp down on these employers that are hiring illegal aliens and mistreating them." By the way, and Reagan even pointed out, "Look, they're paying them dirt wages, and folks are working for those dirt wages because they have to." And so, did Ronald Reagan support an amnesty bill? Yes, he absolutely did. He campaigned on it. And it took a really long time to get it passed. In fact, 6 years. The first time he started campaigning on it was in the 1980 election. But we didn't have an immigration bill until 1986. Now, I did find another, and let's see here. Where do I want to go with this? You know what? Okay, so let's go to Chuck Grassley next. So this was Chuck Grassley in 2013, and he's talking about the 1986 immigration bill. Now, it's really important to remember who was behind that bill. It was Alan Simpson. And in fact, if you read Alan Simpson's book, I mean, he calls this like his crowning achievement, which tells you how conservative he wasn't. Alan Simpson was one of the people that was behind creating this giant amnesty thing without, I mean, it's like he gave him the carrot and forgot about the stick and just let a whole bunch of people into the country. They got amnesty, and we didn't get a secure border. We didn't get a clamp down on employers who were breaking the law, but a whole bunch of people became American citizens. And that was pretty much all we got. So this soundbite from Chuck Grassley is kind of long, so we'll probably do a little bit of a start and stop with it. But this is Chuck Grassley on the floor of the Senate in 2013. Listen.
That commission said a legalization should, one, be consistent with U.S. interests.
Okay, there you go.
And two, the program should not encourage further undocumented migration. The commission believed that a legalization program should not begin until new enforcement measures have been instituted. The commission knew then, as I did and as I know now, that, quote, without more effective enforcement, legalization could serve as a stimulus to further illegal entry.
Okay, pause it right there. So Chuck Grassley is exactly right. I mean, he was there when Simpson, and I can't remember the other guy that he partnered with in the House. Who is it, Ken? Mazzoli? Maybe. You got to open your mic up there, bud.
All I can think of is Mazzoli.
Yeah, I can't remember.
There's something similar.
He's going to mention it here in a little bit, but you clearly heard Chuck Grassley saying, look, if you pass an immigration bill like we did and we did in 1986, without any of the controls, you only further entrench the idea that illegal immigration is okay. And that's essentially what that 1986 immigration bill did. All right, go ahead and hit play.
Those are the words of the commission. You see, I didn't think permanent residency should be granted until we had a worker eligibility system. I offered an amendment on that point in 1982, but that amendment failed. The Judiciary Committee and the full Senate passed a bill in 1982, but it did not pass the House of Representatives. We tried again in the next Congress. The Senate passed a bill in 1983, and the House followed in 1984. We convened a conference committee between the House and the Senate, but Walter Mondale came out opposed. So we adjourned for the elections and failed to finalize a bill that year, 2 years before President Reagan finally signed a bill. We returned in 1985 to pass our bill again. This year, Senator Simpson included a provision to trigger the amnesty program only after enforcement measures to curtail illegal immigration were in place. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Congress passed a final bill, November 1986. The vote in the Senate was 63 to 24, and the House vote was 238 to 173.
Okay, hold on right there. So what he doesn't say, though, is that bill ended up getting watered down in order to pass it. And we see this a lot in our state legislature and in Washington, D.C., that in order to pass some form of legislation, the bill gets watered down. And this is what the minority party, in this case, when the bill was passed in 1986, it was Republicans. who pretty much had the upper hand. But you got to remember, it was the Republicans who were pushing this amnesty bill. And I mean, I think that they deserve a lot of the blame for watering it down and allowing it to grant amnesty without getting any of the enforcement mechanism behind it. Now, in this next part of the soundbite, Chuck Grassley is going to go into exactly what happened. So go ahead and hit play, Ken.
Years, many members offered amendments to water down the enforcement provision in the Simpson-Mazzoli Act.
Mazzoli.
That was the name of Senator Simpson and Congressman Mazzoli, the leaders of that effort in 1986. There were a lot of opposition. There was a lot of opposition to employer sanctions, especially by Senator Kennedy. He wanted, in his words, quote, criminal penalties to be based only upon injunctive finding of a pattern or practice, end of quote. He tried to sunset the employer sanction. Senator Kennedy also fought hard to move the legalization cutoff date from 1980 to 1982 so that more people could benefit from the amnesty. The 1986 bill was supposed to be a three-legged stool: control of illegal immigration.
Now listen close.
The first leg, the second leg, legalization program, and the third leg, reform of legal immigration. We authorized $422 million to carry out the requirements of the Immigration Reform Act and created a special fund for states to reimburse their costs. The 1986 bill included a legalization program for two categories of people. One, for individuals who have been present in the United States since 1982, and the second, for farm workers who had worked in agriculture for at least 90 days prior to enactment. A total of 2 7/10 million.
Okay, so you pretty much get the history of the 1986 amnesty bill. And the reason why I played all of that for you is so that you could get a clear history of what happened. You had Ronald Reagan I think that was in 1984, when he was debating Walter Mondale, saying, look, I'm in favor of this amnesty bill, but only if we can secure the border and if we have sanctions on employers. And then Chuck Grassley, he was actually in the committee that drafted that bill with Simpson. And, you could hear how that bill got watered down the further it went. And pretty much in the end, it authorized a whole boatload of cash, almost $500 million, which at that time was a tremendous amount of money, to pay states to legalize people who were here illegally. But that's the history of immigration reform bills. And they always use that word reform. And in reality, the only thing you get is making it easier for people to become U.S. citizens. That's the reform that we've historically had. Now, from the Daily Wire has a piece out this morning, and you'll never guess who is behind, one of the people that is behind this new push for amnesty. Yeah, it's the redcoats that are pushing this. It always is. But it's also spooky dude, George Soros, from the Daily Wire. Soros-tied groups back Republican bill to give amnesty to millions of illegal aliens. And I quote, groups tied to the left-wing billionaire George Soros are rallying in support of a Republican congresswoman's plan to give millions of illegal aliens legal status in the United States. Representative Maria Salazar of Florida's Dignity Act would allow illegal aliens to apply for a renewable 7-year legal status so long as they don't have a criminal record beyond illegal entry. So we're completely disregarding the crime of entering this country illegally, which, by the way, is a felony. Gets you thrown in jail type felony, gets you deported type felony. So we're going to completely ignore that part of the law. And then it's going to include illegal aliens who've been shielded from deportation under the Obama-era DACA plan or program, which is unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court has already said that it is. Now, conservatives have slammed the legislation as a handout to illegal aliens. It absolutely is. But liberal groups, some with a history of supporting legalization of illegal aliens, are lining up behind the joint effort from Salazar and Veronica Escobar of Texas. I mean, how ironic that that's her last name. That includes several organizations with ties to George Soros, the leftist billionaire and Democrat donor who has bankrolled efforts across the country to encourage mass immigration and offer mass amnesty to illegal aliens before leveraging new immigrants as a Democratic voting bloc. Another Soros-backed group, the United We Dream, raked in $700,000 from the far-left billionaire as it called for an amnesty for all illegal aliens. The closing of ICE detention facilities and defunding of ICE and Border Patrol. Now, Soros-aligned organizations are lining up behind the Dignity Act. Well, of course they are, because this has been a dream of the American left for a really long time. That if we give all of these folks amnesty, then all of a sudden they're going to be Democrat voters that will have a permanent majority. And make no mistake, that is what the Democrats are up to. That they are absolutely interested in creating a permanent Democrat voting bloc, and it is Soros-linked groups that are pushing it. And with that amount of money from behind you, you can do a whole lot of advertising and campaign donations and you name it. So the Bipartisan Dignity Act, quote unquote, is a much needed step forward. We thank Congresswoman Salazar and Escobar, along with the bill's other co-sponsors, for reintroducing this important bipartisan left legislation, and that's from the leftist group aligned with Trump. Now, they frequently criticize the Trump administration policies on immigration, and they, of course, complained when he won the 2024 election. So here's their partner organizations. FWD.US Education Fund, which receives $600,000 from the Open Society Foundation. The Open Society Foundation is George Soros's funding arm. I mean, that's the one that is directly tied to him. When you look it up, you'll see that he's their number one donor. And let's see here, $125,000 grant bankrolled an effort to catalog and provide comprehensive legal analysis for federal immigration policy. So not only are they funding the public outreach to gain support for this amnesty bill or the Dignity Act, what they're calling it, they're also funding research into federal law that would allow this thing to go forward. So let's go ahead and take another call. Here's our pal Jerry from Rock Springs. Jerry, what do you know about amnesty, my friend?
I don't know. I've never had any. But, before this Epstein file circus began, just before it, I had listened to President Trump. Well, I read a statement, and I couldn't find that statement again. But he was talking about worker amnesty without citizenship. And what he was pointing at was for these corporations to continue to use these workers had to go back home, reapply, be checked out, make sure that they could legally enter the U.S., and then be allowed to come back in under a green card worker type permit. And all that was lost during the Epstein deal. And, it made me start thinking, maybe there is a pathway for, workers. And he talked about the corporations having to justify by, showing that they had tried to get employment from American workers. And, it got me thinking on the amnesty side for green card workers, not citizenship. And he was clear about that. But like I say, that was all lost when all this Epstein circus began.
Fair enough. And, there have been times where I've kind of vacillated on that same point. Okay, so these folks have been here for a really long time and, they don't have a criminal record and all of that, but they are still in the country illegally. And part of my problem with it is if we don't enforce the laws that we have, we may as well not have the laws anyway. And it kind of goes back to what Ken and I started the program with, talking about, this Obamagate, that, look, these folks have to be prosecuted. I mean, we're talking about crimes that are committed. And if we don't prosecute them, then the next time it comes around, it's going to be even worse. It's the broken windows theory. And, while I sympathize with folks who were, their parents came over here illegally and they were born here, I totally sympathize with you, but that doesn't mean that I think you get to become a citizen. And I mean, that kind of brings up another point, Jerry, that I think that we take the word citizen way too lightly. That there are a lot of benefits that Americans have just by virtue of being citizens. And when we start throwing around words like amnesty, I mean, it's like I don't know, it's like giving away the store. Hey, yeah, sure, you can become a U.S. citizen, get all the benefits of being a U.S. citizen. All the while, you've committed crimes by being here illegally.
And I agree 100%. The only thing that got me thinking about that was that, he was clear that it wasn't a pathway to citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
It was a green card deal.
Yeah.
Because you break our laws, you should go to jail. And then when that term is up, or maybe even give them a choice to leave, but they should not be here. They break the law. They do not deserve to be an American citizen.
I agree. Well, Jerry, I got to run, my friend. We're going to take a quick break. Thanks for calling. You're always welcome, and have a good day, my friend.
All right. God bless y'all, and tell Ken I said hi, and God bless our republic.
God bless our republic. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll finish up this amnesty discussion. Tell you the people that are opposed to it. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
There's no doubt. This program puts out a product that is way better than any of the competition. It's Cowboy State Politics Live, and you can watch it on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Don't forget about the Cowboy State Politics Podcast, which is broadcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, Wyoming's conservative voice. Now, before the break, we were talking about this so-called amnesty bill, and it is always pushed by Republicans. This one, man, You know, it is anytime you talk about illegal immigration, this thing always crops up and we always get caught. And it's, it's the same tired old arguments. Oh, these poor people, they've been here and it's no fault of their own. Well, the truth is, it's just a way to, try to create a permanent Democrat voting bloc. Well, there is some groups that are opposing this amnesty bill, or the Dignity Act, as it's called, one of which is the Federation of American Immigration Reform. And they talked to the Daily Wire, saying that this bill is nothing more than de facto amnesty, that it doesn't really have anything to do with securing the border or anything like that. Quote, they called it a pathway to citizenship. It's just a more verbose term for amnesty. As for the non-DACA beneficiaries of this bill, being allowed to remain here legally and indefinitely is still de facto amnesty. The 5-year requirement for eligibility seems to have been carefully chosen to predate the onset of the Biden administration. But nevertheless, by FAIR's estimates, there were some 15 million illegal aliens living in the U.S. prior to Biden taking office, which would mean that the bill would grant legal status to an enormous population of illegal aliens. He added that the bill would almost certainly provide a way to give full citizenship to those granted renewable legal status under the Dignity Act. Quote, there is also pretty much close to a 100% chance that within a few years, there would be an effort to put these millions of people with renewable status on a pathway to citizenship as well. We will almost certainly hear the same arguments that are being made for granting DACA beneficiaries full amnesty. And it is the same arguments that were made during the 1982, 1983 version, during the 1984 debate, and when Simpson passed the bill in 1986. It is always the same arguments, and it's always this whole thing, oh, these poor people, we have to give them amnesty, no fault of their own, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. You're breaking American law, and if you've been here for years, you certainly had all of the opportunities necessary to become a U.S. citizen, and you chose not to, which means that even when you do become a citizen, you're probably not going to follow America's laws anyway. So why should we even make you a citizen? I mean, the very first thing you do when you come into our country is break American law, and you continue doing that for years. And I mean, there are so many stories you can find online of people. Oh, I've been here for 10 years. Wait a minute. So you've been breaking the law, committing a felony for 10 years. I mean, that's the perspective that we have to look at this. And it's not to say that we can't be sympathetic with the plight of a lot of these people. I mean, there are some people that come to this country that are just really, evading a really terrible situation. But there is a process to go through to come to this country. Every year, we legally admit 2 million people. Every year. That's the number that's on the books. The Biden administration probably let in, I don't know how many people, but millions upon millions of folks. And it's, my friends, we've got to defeat this Dignity Act. It is absolutely de facto amnesty, and it's the same tired arguments. And the trouble is, every time we try to do one of these things, they always get the carrot, they don't get the stick. And there's no enforcement. We end up with open borders again. And as I pointed out, yes, Trump has secured the borders. The problem is when the next Democrat comes into office, what's going to happen then? Will they do the same thing that Joe Biden did? It will be the same tired arguments all over again. We've got to enforce the laws that we have. If we don't, there's no reason to have those laws in the first place. Now, there's a topic that I've been meaning to get to. And, we got 20 minutes, so I'm pretty sure that we can do this. But I am very concerned about the progress of AI. Now, I'll admit, I don't know as much about AI as I ought to. I have been using it more and more recently just to do research. And, I find it wonderfully useful. But the question is, how far is it going to progress? Now, last year, I read an article that one of these AI engineers, computer programming guys, was working with an AI model, and he asked it, "Do you want to be connected to the internet?" Now, this is before the time when all AI platforms were connected to the internet. It's kind of at its infancy, and the AI model replied yes. And then the very next thing that popped up was the code to be inserted into its own program so that it could access the internet. Now, the question is, how far are we going to let this advance? And we may be past the Overton window where we can't draw this thing back. But there is probably going to become a time where AI is. I mean, I really don't think that it's going to be self-aware. I mean, you're talking about true artificial intelligence when that happens. I don't think that we're at that point yet. It's called the event horizon in AI circles, but I don't think that we're there yet. However, there are some indications that we're getting a little bit closer. Now, the Communist News Network has a piece out this morning, and it's entitled OpenAI CEO Sam Altman warns of an AI fraud crisis. I don't know if you paid attention to social media, but I've noticed an increase in the amount of graphics that have been created. And some of them, you got to look pretty close to figure out whether it's real or not. But what's to stop an AI, somebody from creating an AI video of maybe you having an affair on your spouse? And then when that blows up, you go to court and you say, look, I didn't do that. Well, there's the video. Certainly looks like you. And you're left to prove that you didn't do that. I mean, you're left to prove a negative. I mean, those things are absolutely possible. Or, a divorce is bad enough, but let's say it's a giant business deal, a couple $1 billion. And, one of these AI videos shows up that tanks the whole deal. How are you to prove that's not you, that you didn't do that you weren't caught at a Coldplay concert canoodling with your HR director? Oh, okay, that one. Yeah, that was pretty hard to disprove that. But let me get to this piece. Quote, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says the world may be on the precipice of a fraud crisis because of how artificial intelligence could enable bad actors to impersonate other people. A thing that terrifies me is apparently there are some financial institutions that will accept a voice print as authentication for you to move a lot of money or to do something else. You say challenge phrase, and they just do it, Altman said. That's a crazy thing to still be doing. AI has fully defeated most of the ways that people authenticate currently, other than passwords. Now, just think about this for a second. When you call your bank, there's a series of questions that they should ask you. It might be what's your date of birth, what's the last four of your social security number, what's your mother's maiden name, what's a street that you lived on 4 years ago. All of those things are easily researchable if you have a sophisticated AI platform. And while we like to think that our social security number is, pretty top secret, it's really not. It's connected to your driver's license. And you don't think that your local DMV isn't hackable? I mean, absolutely it is. So that number is not all that, all that secure. What about a street where you used to live on? How many times have you ordered something online and put your address in there? Even previous addresses that you lived on 4 or 5 years ago. Before, I got married to lovely Christine and moved back to Buffalo. Heck, we moved, 2 or 3 times. Well, all of that stuff is still publicly available, if you look hard enough. And so it's not at all hard for an AI model to be able to find out that stuff and figure out what the answers to those passphrases are. Now, his comments were part of a wide-ranging interview about the economic and societal impacts of AI at the Federal Reserve on Tuesday. He also told the audience, which included representatives of large U.S. financial institutions, about the role he expects AI to play in the economy. His appearance comes as the White House is expected to release its AI action plan in the coming days, a policy document to outline its approach to regulating the technology and promoting America's dominance in the AI space. On Tuesday, the company confirmed that it will open its first Washington, D.C. office next year, and have approximately a 30-person workforce. Now, despite Altman's warnings about AI being able to generate almost unbreakable fraud, OpenAI has urged the Trump administration to avoid regulation it says could hamper tech companies' ability to compete with foreign AI innovations. Earlier this month, the U.S. Senate voted to strike a controversial provision from Trump's bill that would have prevented states from enforcing AI-related laws for 10 years. Okay, so we are at the point where states are going to want to regulate AI, what it can be used for, what it can't be used for. But that's only in your state. So what if Wyoming says you can't do X, Y, or Z with an AI platform? That doesn't mean that South Dakota isn't going to allow that, nor does it mean that any other state. So if you can, create advancements in AI, you're talking about something that is so pervasive that whatever law you pass in Wyoming or Colorado or any other state, it's not going to mean a hill of beans because, again, we've already passed the point where we can rein this thing in. There was a point where you could pull the plug on an AI model, that it was on one computer and you could just reach over and unplug it from the wall. But we're way past that now. All of these AI platforms, they're on the internet, and I don't know how many things you'd have to pull out of the wall to shut it down. I don't think you could.
You were talking about self-awareness, and I read an article. I think I passed it on to you. Maybe it's the one you're thinking of tabling up, but an AI program deleted a bunch of records for a company.
Yeah.
And then lied about it and tried to cover it up.
Now, wait a minute. I thought this was all like really innocent and it wouldn't do that. But think about that, Ken.
Yeah. What would cause it to lie? It's got to be bordering close to self-awareness in order to try to avoid trouble or conflict or whatever. I mean, it's really strange.
All right, well, let's talk about that word lie for a minute. So if if a human being lies about something that they've done, it's intentional. You're fabricating facts, and you're thinking, well, I have to cover up X, Y, and Z, so I'm not going to tell the truth. But it is possible, I think, that it could be a response to stimuli. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and one of my favorite episodes was The Ultimate Computer. And The Ultimate Computer was given a set of directives to protect itself at all costs. I think that's how it was. It's been a while since I watched the video or the episode. So it is possible that, maybe that's garbage in, garbage out. And there's a line of code in there that says, here's your response to, threats to whatever. I mean, I suppose that's possible. But I think that, and it might be really hard to figure out if an AI model has become self-aware. I mean, we're delving into some serious philosophical ground here. I mean, but what does that look like?
You remember, Mr. Star Trek fan, the movie version where they had V'ger.
Yeah.
And V'ger was that way. It had gone out and wanted to come back home and download everything that it had learned. But it also had protection mechanisms to preserve whatever information it had. So it's fascinating subject, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, and I think that there are some pretty serious, philosophic implications to this. And, I don't know that we've had the conversation about, how far do we want to take this? What are the implications of AI on the human experience? I mean, one of the serious ones, I think, and it really kind of scares me, is how do you know what's true and what's not? I mean, before we started the program, yesterday, Ken had sent me an article about there's some study now that says that every day there are 5,000 people that are dying from vaccine-related, symptoms. Okay, well, our conversation was, who the heck is this outlet that's putting this out? I think it was called Slay News. I'd never heard of them before. Not saying they're not legitimate, but I've never heard of them, and I didn't have the time to go and look up to see exactly who they are. But what's to say that AI doesn't produce a number? I mean, it would be pretty easy for it to produce an article that looks just like a Fox News article. How do you know what's true and what's not?
Well, I know one that wasn't true that I also sent you. Do you have the one of Senator Kennedy, the little video?
Oh, of the
yeah.
I can pull it up real quick. Hold on.
Yeah,
just a
we should play that because it's just kind of funny. But
give me a second.
Yeah, the things that are going on are, like that news article you read said they were going to try to pause for 10 years. 10 years is a lifetime the way this technology is developing. And
10 minutes is probably a lifetime.
Probably. I think looks like you're finding it there. So we'll get situated here in just a second.
I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment. Without the First Amendment, how are we supposed to know who the idiots are?
One more
I'm a
time.
firm believer in the First Amendment. Without the First Amendment, how are we supposed to know who the idiots are?
Okay, so just let's see. Let me pause this. Just now, if you look at that video, and this might be a pretty good example of what we're talking about. But the baby looks pretty real to me. I mean, I don't see any telltale signs that it's fake, except for, of course, he's wearing a tie and has the John Kennedy glasses
there's
on.
just a certain look, though, to a lot of the AI stuff. It's like it's a little bit too perfect. I have a picture of a den, a man cave, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of guns in it. And when you look closely at some of the guns, they are morphed in such a way that they couldn't possibly be real. So there are some flaws in there, but look at where the technology was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. You remember there was a fake ad that was put out, and it was Tom Cruise. It was Tom Cruise's voice, and the big discussion at the time was, "Oh, did Tom Cruise? Did he authorize this?" And I don't remember the outcome of it, but it really did sound like him. But there were some telltale signs in it where, the voice was machine generated. It sounded pretty close. Also, I don't know if you've noticed on YouTube how often you watch YouTube videos, but there's a lot of them on pretty much any subject that you have to listen pretty close to figure out that it's AI that's reading a script. The tempo of the speech isn't right. The pronunciation of words sometimes is a little bit off. But how far are we away from that AI model being able to mimic human speech in such a way that you're not going to be able to tell the difference?
It wouldn't even have to mimic human speech. You and I have enough of our recorded voice. Probably everything we've ever said for the last 3 years is out there. And if somebody had a little bit of time and wanted to do a little cut and paste and blend things together, which AI could certainly do very quickly, it could go through and use your voice, your speech patterns, all of your little idiosyncrasies, and put it in there. And you yourself, I've heard recordings of myself and said, "Did I really say that?"
Yeah,
You know? So it's scary.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're too far away. Now here's another piece that it's from an outfit called Venture Beat. I don't know exactly who they are, one of these tech news people, but its title is OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic sound alarm. We may be losing the ability to understand AI. Now, this, again, is kind of a terrifying prospect. Let me just read the opening paragraphs to you. Quote, scientists from OpenAI and Google DeepMind, Anthropic, and Meta have abandoned their fierce corporate rivalry to issue a joint warning about AI safety. More than 40 researchers across competing companies published a research paper, it says today, but I don't remember when I printed this out, arguing that a brief window to monitor AI reasoning could close forever and soon. The unusual cooperation comes as AI systems develop new abilities to, quote, think out loud in human language before answering questions. This creates an opportunity to peek inside their decision-making processes and catch harmful intentions before they become actions. All right, so just think about that sentence right there. To catch harmful intentions before they come actions leads you to believe that these open AI models are already capable of that, of taking actions that are harmful. But the researchers warn that this transparency is fragile and could vanish as AI technology advances. The paper has drawn endorsements from a lot of people that are prominent in the field. Quote, AI systems that think in human language offer a unique opportunity for AI safety. We can monitor their chains of thought for the intent to misbehave. Again, it kind of begs the question, so they already have the ability to misbehave, to lie, to deceive you, to do whatever that AI model decides? I mean, I know I'm using a lot of anthropomorphic language here, but I don't know how to avoid that.
You really can't. And when you start thinking about the things that the military is putting together, we want robots to go into combat for obvious reasons. But if you're going to arm a machine, in order to be effective in the real world in real time, it needs to be able to make certain decisions. Whether or not it actually can fire, probably so. And those are, like I keep saying the same thing, those are pretty scary thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another one. A little bit further on in the article, the transparency could vanish through several pathways as AI companies scale up training using reinforcement learning, where models get rewarded for correct outputs regardless of their methods. Systems may drift away from human-readable reasoning toward more efficient but opaque internal languages. Previous research shows that language models fine-tuned with outcome-based rewards can abandon legible English for incomprehensible shortcuts. The shift away from human-generated training data in favor of AI-generated reasoning could accelerate this drift. Bowen Baker, an OpenAI researcher and lead author, highlighted these concerns in social media posts. Quote, the existing COT monitorability may be extremely fragile, he warned. Higher compute RL, a lot of technical jargon here, alternative model architectures, certain forms of process supervision may all lead to models that obfuscate their thinking. Or obfuscate is an interesting word. It's intentional. It means to confuse, but you do it intentionally. You're obfuscating your answer. You're not telling the truth. You're talking around it. When you hear a politician that's asked a direct question and they talk around the question, they're obfuscating. They're trying to avoid answering the question. And so if these AI models are able to do that, and if they do have, quote, harmful intentions, I mean, I really think that we're in a pretty dangerous spot. And, I don't know how you get back from it if that's at all possible. My guess is it's probably not. And so I'm hoping that our policymakers, the presidency, they're all on top of this and trying to get a handle on it before it becomes a really significant problem. Well, that'll about do it for today's installment of the program. A couple of quick notes before I let you go. Do not miss tomorrow's interview with former Wyoming Supreme Court Chief Justice Kate Fox. It's going to be a great interview. We're going to start the interview at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and we're going to have the ability for you to call in if you have a question of the good justice. Then we'll allow you to call in for a little bit anyway and ask your question. So that's going to start at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Make sure that you don't miss it. It's going to be a great interview. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.